A king and his minister were A king and his minister were standing on the palace walls, looking down on the busy market-place on a warm and sunny afternoon. The king was eating a rice cake with honey on it as the two talked about matters of the kingdom. As they talked, a little drop of honey fell from the rice cake and onto the window ledge below them. The minister began to walk away from the king. "Where are you going?" asked the king. "I am going to get a servant to clean up the honey," answered the minister. "Don't bother," said the king. "It is not our problem, not a problem at all." As the king talked, the honey trickled down the window ledge and onto the street below. The king and his minister watched as a number of flies began to land on the honey. "Your Majesty," said the minister, "perhaps we should do something about the honey before there is a problem."
Taking so many steps may seem inconvenient, but I want to do everything possible to ensure that my family and I are eating the freshest and healthiest food possible. For example, I never buy out-of-season produce. In the fall, I buy squash, zucchini, turnips, and kale. In the spring, I buy asparagus, carrots, and parsnips. Once I finish with the farmer's market, I walk the 5 blocks to the bakery. I don't eat gluten, but my kids and my husband do. In this bakery, I find the freshest ciabatta or pita bread, either with or without gluten. Finally, I go to the bulk store. I buy a variety of products up to 50% cheaper than in the grocery store. I save money this way. But I can also buy food like sunflower seeds, rice, beans, dried fruits, and nuts without the packaging. What about you? Do you make a shopping list? Do you do all your shopping in the grocery store? At a convenience store. Good morning. Good morning, sir. How can I help you? Do you carry batteries here? Yes, we do. What type are you looking for? I need rechargeable batteries. These are rechargeable. How much are they? They are $6. Do you accept credit cards? Yes, Visa and MasterCard. Here is my MasterCard. Just put it in the machine right there. Oh, okay. Would you like your receipt, or should I just put it in the bag? The bag is fine. Will there be anything else? No, thank you. Have a nice evening. Thank you. You too. Come back soon. Shopping for clothes. Hello. Hello, miss. How can I help you? I would like to buy some shoes. Do you have any particular style in mind? Well, I would like a pair of flats. We have a good selection of flats over here. How much are these? Those are $15, miss. May I try them on? Of course. What size do you wear? I wear a size 7. Let me check if we have them. May I try these? The others are uncomfortable. Yes, of course. These are perfect. Would you have them in black? I'm sorry, this is the only color we have. That's okay, these will be fine. Great, that will be $16. Thank you so much for your help. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Archimedes of Syracuse was an ancient Greek mathematician, physicist, engineer, inventor, and astronomer. Although few details of his life are known, he is regarded as one of the leading scientists in classical antiquity. Generally considered the greatest mathematician of antiquity and one of the greatest of all times, Archimedes anticipated modern calculus and analysis by applying concepts of infinitesimals and the method of exhaustion to derive and rigorously prove a range of geometrical theorems, including the area of a circle, the surface area and volume of a sphere, and the area under a parabola. The most widely known anecdote about Archimedes tells how he invented a method for determining the volume of an object with an irregular shape. According to the author Vitruvius, a crown for a temple had been made for King Hiero II, who had supplied the pure gold to be used, and Archimedes was asked to determine whether some silver had been substituted by the dishonest goldsmith. Archimedes had to solve the problem without damaging the crown, so he could not melt it down into a regularly shaped body in order to calculate its density. While taking a bath, he noticed that the level of water in the tub rose as he got in, and realized that this effect could be used to determine the volume of the crown. For practical purposes, water is incompressible, so the submerged crown would displace an amount of water equal to its own volume. By dividing the mass of the crown by the volume of water displaced, the density of the crown could be obtained. This density would be lower than that of gold, if cheaper and less dense metals had been added. Archimedes then took to the streets naked, so excited by his discovery that he had forgotten to dress, crying, "Eureka!" meaning, "I have found it." The test was conducted successfully, proving that silver had indeed been mixed in. This story first appeared in written form in Vitruvius's Book of Architecture, 2 centuries after it supposedly took place. Some scholars have doubted the accuracy of this tale, saying among other things that the method would have required precise measurements that would have been difficult to make at the time. Galileo Galilei himself weighed in on the controversy, suggesting a design for a hydrostatic balance that could be used to compare the dry weight of an object with the weight of the same object submerged in water. For the problem posed to Archimedes, though, there is a simple method which requires no precision equipment. Balance the crown against pure gold in air, and then submerge the scale with the crown and gold in water to see if they still balance. This is a story that the old people have been telling to their children for hundreds of years. It is a sad tale, but it lives strong in the memories of the people. And there are many who swear that it is true. A long time ago, in a humble little village, there lived a fine-looking girl named Maria. Some say she was the most beautiful girl in the world. And because she was so beautiful, Maria thought she was better than everyone else. As Maria grew older, her beauty increased and her pride in her beauty grew too. When she was a young woman, she would not even look at the young men from her village. They weren't good enough for her. "When I marry," Maria would say, "I will marry the most handsome man in the world." And then, one day, into Maria's village rode a man who seemed to be just the one she had been talking about. He was a dashing young rancher, the son of a wealthy rancher from the southern plains. He could ride marvelously. In fact, if he owned a horse and it grew tame, he would give it away and go rope a wild horse from the plains. He thought it wasn't manly to ride a horse if it wasn't half wild. He was handsome, and he could play the guitar and sing beautifully. Maria made up her mind that was the man for her. She knew just the tricks to win his attention. If the rancher spoke when they met on the pathway, she would turn her head away. When he came to her house in the evening to play his guitar and serenade her, she wouldn't even come to the window. She refused all his costly gifts. The young man fell for her tricks. That haughty girl, Maria, Maria, he said to himself. I know I can win her heart. I swear I'll marry that girl. And so, everything turned out as Maria planned. Before long, she and the rancher became engaged, and soon they were married. At first, things were fine. They had 2 children, and they seemed to be a happy family together. But after a few years, the rancher went back to the wild life of the prairies. He would leave town and be gone for months at a time. And when he returned home, it was only to visit the children. He seemed to care nothing for the beautiful Maria. He even talked of setting Maria aside and marrying a woman of his own wealthy class. As proud as Maria was, of course she became very angry with the rancher. She also began to feel anger toward her children because he paid attention to them, but just ignored her. One evening, as Maria was strolling with her 2 children on the shady pathway near the river, the rancher came by in a carriage. An elegant lady sat on the seat beside him. He stopped and spoke to his children, but he didn't even look at Maria. He whipped the horses on up the street. When she saw that, a terrible rage filled Maria, and it all turned against her children. And although it's sad to tell, the story says that in her anger, Maria took her 2 children and threw them into the river. But as they disappeared downstream, she realized what she had done. She ran down the bank of the river, reaching out her arms to them, but they were long gone. The next morning, a traveler brought word to the villagers that a beautiful woman lay dead on the bank of the river. That is where they found Maria, and they laid her to rest where she had fallen. But the first night Maria was in the grave, the villagers heard the sound of a crying down by the river. It was not the wind, it was La Llorona crying, "Where are my children?" And they saw a woman walking up and down the bank of the river, dressed in a long white robe, the way they had dressed Maria for burial. On many dark nights, they saw her walk the bank of the river and cry for her children, and so they no longer spoke of her as Maria. They called her La Llorona, the weeping woman, and by that name she is known to this day. Children are warned not to go out in the dark because La Llorona might snatch them and never return them.
International Women's Day is celebrated each year on March 8th. It is a holiday that recognizes women's achievements and promotes their rights. In 1910, a group of women fighting for the right to vote met at an international women's conference in Copenhagen. Clara Zetkin, a German advocate for women's rights, proposed celebrating an annual Women's Day to promote equal rights for women. The following year, Austria, Germany, Denmark, and Switzerland celebrated International Women's Day for the first time. In 1977, the United Nations invited member nations to celebrate International Women's Day on March 8th. Why this date? On March 8th, 1917, thousands of Russian women took the streets asking for the end of the war and bigger food rations. It was the beginning of the revolution. Many countries celebrate International Women's Day as an opportunity to highlight women's rights, needs, and achievements. In some countries, women receive small gifts or flowers. For instance, in Romania and Bulgaria, the day is similar to Mother's Day. In Italy, men give yellow mimosas to women. Public talks, performances, and lectures are held to celebrate women's achievements. In some countries, women take to the streets to make gender inequality more visible. The United Nations supports International Women's Day, holding events each year to discuss women's rights issues. Hello, Lucy. Hello, Azra. It's great to see you. How are you? Great. Last week, I went on 2 dates. One with Daniel, a dentist, and one with Hugo, a musician. First, tell me about Daniel, the dentist. Well, I met Daniel online. After 2 months of chatting, he asked me out. I said yes. I was super excited to meet him in person, but also a little afraid. Have you ever video called? Just once. At least you were sure he was a real person. What does he look like? He is good looking. He has fair skin. He is thin and tall. He has dark hair and a beard. Can you show me a photo? How old is he? He is 30 years old. And where did you guys go? He picked me up at my house, and we went to a Thai restaurant for dinner. That sounds good. How was it? Well, we already knew each other, so we got along really well. He is very polite. But I realized there is no spark. What do you mean? I don't know. That is why I am so confused. He is pretty much my type. I really enjoyed chatting with him. I felt butterflies in my stomach. But now that we have met, I feel like I am talking to a childhood friend or even a brother. Definitely not a good sign. Robin and Joseph's bedroom has a bathroom and a closet. They keep their clothes in the closet. Anna's bedroom is next to her parents'. Her bedroom is smaller. She has a small bed. Next to her bed, there is a pink carpet. The window has pink curtains. The walls are white. Anna keeps her toys on shelves. The other bedroom is the guest room. The house has a big garden. Anna likes to play outside. She loves to play with spots. On Sundays, the Smiths have breakfast in the garden. They enjoy the fresh air. My father was a St. Bernard. My mother was a collie. But I am a Presbyterian. This is what my mother told me. I do not know these nice distinctions myself. To me they are only fine large words meaning nothing. My mother had a fondness for such. She liked to say them. She liked to see other dogs look surprised and envious, as wondering how she got so much education. But indeed it was not real education. It was only show. She got the words by listening in the dining room and drawing room when there was company, by going with the children to Sunday school and listening there. Whenever she heard a large word, she said it over to herself many times. She kept it until there was a dogmatic gathering in the neighborhood. Then she would get it off. She would surprise and distress them all, from pocket pup to mastiff, which rewarded her for all her trouble. If there was a stranger, he was nearly sure to be suspicious. When he got his breath again, he would ask her what it meant, and she always told him. He was never expecting this, but thought he would catch her. So when she told him, he was the one that looked ashamed, whereas he had thought it was going to be she. The others were always waiting for this, and glad of it, and proud of her. They knew what was going to happen. They had had experience. When she told the meaning of a big word, they were all so taken up with admiration that it never occurred to any dog to doubt if it was the right one. That was natural. Because, for one thing, she answered up so promptly that it seemed like a dictionary speaking. For another thing, where could they find out whether it was right or not? For she was the only cultivated dog there was. By and by, when I was older, she brought home the word unintellectual one time. She worked it pretty hard all the week at different gatherings, making much unhappiness and despondency. It was at this time that I noticed that during that week she was asked for the meaning at 8 different assemblages. She flashed out a fresh definition every time. This showed me that she had more presence of mind than culture, though I said nothing, of course. She had one word which she always kept on hand, and ready, like a life preserver. A kind of emergency word to strap on when she was likely to get washed overboard in a sudden way. That was the word synonymous. When she happened to fetch out a long word which had had its day weeks before, and its prepared meanings gone to her dump pile, if there was a stranger there, of course it knocked him groggy for a couple of minutes. Then he would come to. By that time she would be away downwind on another tack, and not expecting anything. So when he'd hail and ask her to cash in, I, the only dog on the inside of her game, could see her canvas flicker a moment, but only just a moment. Then it would be belly out, taut and full, and she would say, as calm as a summer's day, "It's synonymous with supererogation," or some godless long reptile of a word like that. And she would go placidly about. She would skim away on the next tack, perfectly comfortable, you know. She would leave that stranger looking profane and embarrassed, and the initiated slatting the floor with their tails in unison, and their faces transfigured with a holy joy. And it was the same with phrases. She would drag home a whole phrase if it had a grand sound, and play it 6 nights and 2 matinees. She would explain it a new way every time. She had to, for all she cared for was the phrase. She wasn't interested in what it meant. And she knew those dogs hadn't wit enough to catch her anyway. Yes, she was a daisy. She got so she wasn't afraid of anything. She had such confidence in the ignorance of those creatures. She even brought anecdotes that she had heard the family and the dinner guests laugh and shout over. And as a rule, she got the nub of one chestnut hitched onto another chestnut, where of course it didn't fit and hadn't any point. And when she delivered the nub, she fell over and rolled on the floor and laughed and barked in the most insane way. I could see that she was wondering to herself why it didn't seem as funny as it did when she first heard it. But no harm was done. The others rolled and barked too, privately ashamed of themselves for not seeing the point, never suspecting that the fault was not with them, and there wasn't any to see. I am Nancy. I go to school every day. My dad is a doctor. He helps people when they are sick. My mom is a teacher. She teaches children to read and write. My cousins are basketball players. They play in a big team. That is what we do. They work, I study. But first of all, we are a family. Franklin was a quiet town. For that reason, everyone was surprised when Jimmy Johnson went missing. Detective Gregory Park had not had a case in a long time. Now he was sitting in front of Elmore Williams. Williams lived with his sick grandchild. Park had the feeling he was wasting his time. What could this old man know about Jimmy? The day Jimmy went missing, he was playing with other children outside his home. Nothing appeared to be wrong. Jimmy's mother checked on him from time to time. 20 minutes after the mother last saw Jimmy, she looked through the window again. The boy was gone. The kids that were playing with Jimmy talked to the police. They said that Jimmy walked away to look for something to eat. He carried his teddy bear under his arm. There were no clues to go on. So Park began to interview the neighbors. Mr. Williams, where were you on March 25th at 6 p.m.? Asked Park. At home. I don't go out often. As you may know, Charlie is ill. What is the matter with him, Mr. Williams? Doctors don't know yet. It started with a fever, but as the days went by, things got much worse. He is asleep almost all the time. He cannot even get up. Park felt sad for the old man. He searched the house, knowing that he would not find anything. He saw Charlie in the bedroom. The boy was fast asleep, like a clay figure. Inviting someone to a party. Hello, Paulo. Hello, Anna. What are you doing tonight? Nothing special. I will call my family in Brazil and wish them happy holidays. Oh, I am attending a family gathering at my parents' house. Would you like to come with me? Thank you very much. I would love to. Great. What should I bring to the party, Anna? Oh, you don't need to bring anything. You are my guest. I'll see you tonight at 7 o'clock. Arriving at a party. Hello, Mom. Hello, Dad. This is Paulo Lima, my Brazilian friend. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Douglas. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me. I brought a bottle of wine. Hello, Paulo. Thank you. We have heard so much about you. Nice to meet you, Paulo. Please come in. We were waiting for you. Let me introduce you to the family. Thanks, Mrs. Douglas. Please call me Martha. This is Helen, Anna's grandmother. This is Joseph, Anna's uncle. This is Rose, my niece. And this is Ryan, her husband. And finally, these are Sarah and John, their children. It's so nice to meet you. Welcome to our home, Paulo. Please take a seat. Dinner will be ready in about 15 minutes. I hope you like turkey. Oh, yes, I love turkey. It was the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. Out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. To my wondering eyes did appear a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment he must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now, Dasher, now, Dancer, now, Prancer and Vixen. On, Comet, on, Cupid, on, Donner and Blitzen. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. His eyes, how they twinkled! His dimples, how merry! His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him, in spite of myself. Soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." Robin and Joseph's bedroom has a bathroom and a closet. They keep their clothes in the closet. Anna's bedroom is next to her parents'. Her bedroom is smaller. She has a small bed. Next to her bed, there is a pink carpet. The window has pink curtains. The walls are white. Anna keeps her toys on shelves. The other bedroom is the guest room. The house has a big garden. Anna likes to play outside. She loves to play with spots. On Sundays, the Smiths have breakfast in the garden. They enjoy the fresh air. The Trojan War had ended. Odysseus was on his voyage home. He arrived at the island of Aeaea. Circe, a beautiful enchantress, inhabited this island. Circe lived in a palace amid a dense wood. She was known for transforming her enemies into animals. Circe transformed Odysseus's crew into swine. Hermes helped Odysseus to resist her magic. Odysseus lived with Circe for a year. Before parting, Circe warned Odysseus about the dangers he would face on his journey. "First, you will come to the Sirens," she said. "They enchant all who come near them." Sirens were stunning and had beautiful voices. Nonetheless, they used their beauty to lure sailors and kill them. "Pass these sirens by," said Circe. "Stop your men's ears with wax. None of them may hear. But if you like, you can listen. Tell your men to tie you to the mast. If you beg the men to untie you, they must bind you faster." Odysseus was adventurous and curious. He wanted to listen to the sirens' seductive song. Odysseus did exactly as Circe had told him. He had all of his sailors plug their ears with beeswax. Then he ordered them to tie him to the mast. He asked his men to leave him tied tightly. Odysseus heard the siren's beautiful song. He ordered the sailors to untie him, but the sailors bound him tighter. Once they had passed the Siren Island, Odysseus was released. That is how Odysseus survived. Among all those mortals who grew so wise that they learned the secrets of the gods, none was more cunning than Daedalus. He once built a wonderful labyrinth of windy ways for King Minos of Crete. The labyrinth was so cunningly tangled up and twisted around that once inside you could never find your way out again without a magic clue. But the king's favor veered with the wind, and one day he had his master architect imprisoned in a tower. Daedalus managed to escape from his cell, but it seemed impossible to leave the island, since every ship that came or went was well guarded by order of the king. At length, watching the seagulls in the air, the only creatures that were sure of liberty, he thought of a plan for himself and his young son Icarus, who was captive with him. Little by little, he gathered a store of feathers great and small. He fastened these together with thread. He molded them in with wax, and so fashioned 2 great wings like those of a bird. When they were done, Daedalus fitted them to his own shoulders. After 1 or 2 efforts, he found that by waving his arms, he could winnow the air and cleave it, as a swimmer does the sea. He held himself aloft and wavered this way and that with the wind. At last, like a great fledgling, he learned to fly. Without delay, he fell to work on a pair of wings for the boy Icarus. He taught the boy carefully how to use them, bidding him beware of rash adventures among the stars. "Remember," said the father, "never to fly very low or very high. The fogs about the earth would weigh you down, but the blaze of the sun will surely melt your feathers apart if you go too near." For Icarus, these cautions went in at one ear and out by the other. Who could remember to be careful when he was to fly for the first time? Are birds careful? Not they. And not an idea remained in the boy's head but the one joy of escape. The day came, and the fair wind that was to set them free. The father bird put on his wings. While the light urged them to be gone, he waited to see that all was well with Icarus, for the 2 could not fly hand in hand. Up they rose, the boy after his father. The hateful ground of Crete sank beneath them. The country folk, who caught a glimpse of them when they were high above the treetops, took it for a vision of the gods. Apollo, perhaps, with Cupid after him. At first there was a terror in the joy. The wide vacancy of the air dazed them. A glance downward made their brains reel. But when a great wind filled their wings, Icarus felt himself sustained, like a halcyon bird in the hollow of a wave, like a child uplifted by his mother. He forgot everything in the world but joy. He forgot Crete and the other islands that he'd passed over. He saw but vaguely that winged thing in the distance before him that was his father Daedalus. He longed for one draught of flight to quench the thirst of his captivity. He stretched out his arms to the sky and made towards the highest heavens. Alas for him! Warmer and warmer grew the air. Those arms that had seemed to uphold him relaxed. His wings wavered, drooped. He fluttered his young hands vainly. He was falling, and in that terror he remembered the heat of the sun had melted the wax from his wings. The feathers were falling one by one like snowflakes, and there was none to help. He fell like a leaf tossed down the wind, down, down, with one cry that overtook Daedalus far away. Daedalus returned and sought high and low for the poor boy. He saw nothing but the bird-like feathers afloat on the water. He knew that Icarus was drowned. The nearest island he named Icaria, in memory of the child. But he, in heavy grief, went to the temple of Apollo in Sicily. There hung up his wings as an offering. Never again did he attempt to fly.